It is a tremendous honor to welcome you to this celebration of the birthday of Mr. Fred Gray. As a dad and as a lawyer, as a former law professor and now president of Lipscomb University, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this video collection of tributes and stories and remembrances as we honor our friend Fred Gray. I'll explain the dad part in just a moment and the doctor part as well. The year was 1994, and my daughter Melinda was 9 years old in the third grade. She was given an assignment by her teacher to do a biographical study of someone who was famous. I was teaching at Pepperdine Law School, and I knew that Mr. Gray was on his way to be a distinguished speaker. And after he arrived and I had a few moments with him, I asked him if he would be willing to be the famous person in her life. I asked him if he'd be willing to be interviewed by a third grader. Knowing Mr. Gray, like many of you do, the graciousness was obvious, and he agreed to do that. He agreed to meet this little girl and to somehow work with her, even though I'm sure she couldn't understand his place in history. And he did that with a sense of friendliness and a great deal of patience and sensitivity. When she gave her report, it was not a static review of literature, something she would have gotten from the library, but from the perspective that she could muster, it was the interaction of a young white girl in Southern California and an older black gentleman from Alabama, and her sense of trying to understand the importance of his life. She's now 34 years old. She has her own family and her own career. I called her and I said, "What do you remember about that moment almost 25 years ago?" She said, "Well, I remember three things. One, if you look in his book, he wrote a really nice note to me." And then she said, "I also remember that, well, at the time I understood this was someone who was very, very important. And yes, I understood that he was important, but I also understood the graciousness he demonstrated to me." And so that's the moment, that's the interaction with a girl in Southern California 25 years ago, but it really is representative of his life. He's deliberate, he's honest, he's compassionate, he's humble, and he's gracious. Those are characteristics of a man who grew up determined to educate himself and then to go on a journey that would be focused on dealing with injustice wherever he found it, but doing all of that in the context of bringing the Spirit of Jesus Christ. Well, years later, that small girl's father had his own memorable interaction with Mr. Gray. It was on the occasion of the dedication of the Gray Institute for Law, Justice, and Society at Lipscomb University. And as we were dedicating that wonderful facility that will be a legacy for him, but also have a continuing daily impact on the lives of young people. We gathered in an Al Arena. There were hundreds and hundreds of people, academics and civic leaders from Nashville. And as we did, I was able to award Mr. Gray an honorary doctorate. And so that's why, for me, he is now Dr. Gray. The degree reflected a fairly complicated history between Mr. Gray and Lipscomb University, one that began when he attended a related institution, the Nashville Christian Institute, but that school was closed, its assets given to the university. He felt strongly that that was wrong and actually filed a lawsuit against us. But decades later, after all that was resolved, the moment of reconciliation, well, that's occurred. And not only has that occurred, but we've defined a new future through the Institute. That partnership, which will again go on for generations, is the result of his graciousness. The second time in at least my relationship with him that has been so evident. It allowed the degree to be granted, and it allowed us to honor him in a recognizable and important way. Today, the institute that bears his name is the home for an undergraduate major called Law, Justice, and Society. It's the home of almost 80 students every year that are majoring in that field. And those students are developing their own passion and preparing themselves and looking forward to, well, the opportunities they too will have to make a difference in this world. Professor Randy Spivey has led that institute since its inception, and he's done a tremendous job in bringing to students a sense of an academic program that is demanding, but also bringing to them a sense of who it's all about. He can translate the passion and the life and the work of Fred Gray so that to them it comes alive as well. And so we gather for this presentation that will involve comments from civil rights advocates. It will involve comments from academics and friends and family, so many people that recognize his work and his impact on the world. Each shares a profound regard for Dr. Gray, and each is thrilled to be a part of this very special moment. So enjoy this collection of thoughts and best wishes, and be thankful. Be thankful that every one of us has been blessed with the opportunity to know Dr. Gray. Across the years, in diverse circumstances, yes, but brought together by the character of his work and the influence of his life. And so I get to be the first. I'm thrilled to be the first to say, happy birthday, Dr. Gray.
Hello, my name is Randy Spivey, and I am the Academic Director for the Fred D. Gray Institute for Law, Justice, and Society here at Lipscomb University. It has been one of the great honors of my life and career to get to know Mr. Gray and to get to share his life and his story with my students. The students are very drawn to Mr. Gray and the work that he has done. They can imagine a more just world and see a path towards that world because of his career, because of his imagination, his steadfastness, and his humility in the work that he has done. More than once, I've talked to students who have become frustrated with issues of injustice around the world, who are encouraged and become optimistic because of seeing the path of Mr. Gray's life. So, Mr. Gray, thank you for your example to my students and to me, to the extraordinary life you are living, and happy birthday on this 90th birthday. I would also like to take a moment to say a word or two about how you can support the work of the Institute and Mr. Gray's ongoing work at the Tuskegee History Center. If you are interested, after watching this video, I encourage you to follow the links on this page to support either or both of the work of the Gray Institute and the Tuskegee History Center. The History Center is an extraordinary small museum in Tuskegee, Alabama, that details the history of African Americans, European Americans, and Native Americans in Macon County, Alabama, and also provides a permanent memorial to the participants in the Tuskegee syphilis study. It is an extraordinary testament, not just to Mr. Gray's work, but to the work of civil rights in Macon County, Alabama. I encourage you to visit it and support it when you can. So once again, happy birthday, Mr. Gray. Thank you for your life, your wisdom, and your example.
As an historian, a lot of times we focus on the big names, Dr. King, Jim Lawson, other civil rights leaders. What we often miss when we do that are the people behind the scenes who really pushed the levers and moved the needle forward for racial harmony and justice in the society. Fred David Gray was born in December 1930 to a modest family in Montgomery, Alabama, situated in a deeply segregated South. Nonetheless, his mother convinced Fred that he could be anything he set his mind to. Consequently, he dedicated his life to dismantling any form of segregation that he could find committed to change an unjust system through the system.
Mr. Gray spent his legal career holding the United States Constitution up to the legal system and saying, "This is what you say we believe. This is what we're supposed to do. Live like it."
Gray attended high school at the Nashville Christian Institute in Nashville, Tennessee. It was a school that was led by the legendary Marshall Keeble, and it was just a few miles from David Lipscomb College, a college that he was not allowed to attend upon his graduation from high school. Because of his interest, his strong interest in eradicating racism, he decided to pursue the law.
Hi, my name is C.K. Hoffler, and I have the honor of serving as president of the National Bar Association during the 2020 and 2021 bar year. It is a distinct pleasure for me to bring greetings and to salute our very own past president of the National Bar, Fred Gray. What could I say about this living legend who has given so much to this country, indeed the world, who has contributed to the very essence of jurisprudence, who has contributed to so much in this country, civil rights, human rights, and represented the least of these, those who needed representation and who didn't have the benefit of a voice, but for his efforts. We know that this past president of the National Bar has given so much to the National Bar. He indeed has elevated the brand of the National Bar. There are untold generations of lawyers who salute Fred Gray on his 90th birthday because of what he's given to us. He's given us and shown us how it is to be a fighter, a civil rights warrior as a lawyer, how to do it with class, tenacity, and how to be aggressive on behalf of your clients. Indeed, we know that he represented Rosa Parks when she was incarcerated in 1955. We know that also he was one of Dr. King's first civil rights lawyers. We know that he was the primary lawyer to represent those plaintiffs associated with the Tuskegee syphilis study, that experiment that marked and that was a cloud over the heads of so many African Americans in this country. And we think now, we're in the age of COVID, we think of the experiments, the testing on African American people. Indeed, we are hesitant, many of us, to accept even vaccinations because of the extraordinary work of one man, one trial lawyer, one president of the National Bar Association, the first African-American president of the Alabama Bar Association. So tonight, today, Fred Gray, on your 90th birthday, on behalf of the National Bar Association, we salute you. We thank you. We honor you. We have already said and bestowed the name of living legend to you this year. We celebrated you as our living legend of the National Bar. But there's nothing more precious than saying happy birthday. And if I could sing, which I can't, I would sing happy birthday to you on your 90th birthday. But I'm going to leave you with a Portuguese expression that basically in me summarizes your journey as a lawyer. A luta continua, vitória é certa. And what does that mean? It means the struggle continues, which is what you've always told us and shown the country and the world. And the second part of the expression, vitória é certa. Victory is certain. Thank you.
My name is Freeman White. I'm Minister Emeritus at Liberty City Church of Christ, where I've been since 1978. God's been good to me and allowed me to call it quits to the pulpit every Sunday, and now I'm just enjoying life and serving God in other ways. I'm bringing you greetings here from the Magic City, salutations and pleadings in the case of Fred Gray that I met back in 1944. He was on a tour with Marshall Keeble, the pioneer preacher in Churches of Christ, as they came through Miami raising funds for Nashville Christian Institute and soliciting students. And after hearing Fred and Brother Keeble talk about the school and the good things that it was doing, my mom and my family decided that I had to go to Nashville to prep school, where I went in 44, and there I stayed and graduated, and I happened to be a classmate of Fred's. And during that time, we shared innumerable fun and good times together. I would say that I was sort of, like the other kids, do little stunts and stuff and get in trouble. Not nothing bad, but trouble. But Fred never did do anything like that. He was always a nice kid. He never did get into any of our pranks and prank and funny stuff at the school. But Fred never stayed at school much. He was always on the road, touring with Brother Keeble across the nation. But he was a scholar, and Fred would come back and study hard, always was immaculate in his dress and humble in his spirit. Fred and I, as we graduated together, I went into the Air Force, and Fred went to college. And during my days in Europe, Fred was at Case Western. And when I came back to the States, and Fred had taken on the case for Dr. King and Rosa Parks, I was preaching in California, still in the military. And I never was involved in that much, but during that time. But it was only after I came back and began preaching for predominantly Black churches. During the other time, they were white churches that I was preaching for while in the service. But when I came back, then I got chance to see Fred again and all of the things that he was doing. I was reading about them, and I would brag on who he was and my relationship with him. During the time that in between during the civil rights era, that Fred and I, after Dr. King died, and we would meet every year at Southwestern Christian College for the lectureships. And at other times, we would be together as he would come through Miami and always give me a call. He was always someone who always regarded the Lord's Day as being sacred. And whenever he was passing through Miami, I got a call. One time I got a call, and he was only going to be here for a little while on Sunday. And he called me, and Fred and I arranged to break bread together at the airport and say a prayer together on his trip out of the country. Fred has been a great influence in my life. Just knowing him has opened doors for me. And anytime anybody knows that Fred's in town and he knows me, then that's my ticket. Fred has an influence in my kid's life. My daughter happened to be in school with Fred's daughter, Vanessa, and they had a great relationship, and that relationship lasts even until this day. Wherever Fred goes, it is an historical event. Whatever venue, whatever city, whatever group he is meeting with, it's history in the making. And I'm glad to be a part of that history. Fred and I have been friends for over 76 years. And Fred is someone that he can call me and I can call him anytime, day and night. And it's been one of those relationships that only God can send into somebody's life. That's how I know Fred. Fred was the board chair at Southwestern, so I got to see him for every year for over 40 years at Southwestern in Terrell, Texas. And so I would say right now that Fred is going to go down not only in the history of jurisprudence, but also in what we call hagiographical biography, that of a saint, that of someone who worked in the church for many years as an elder and as a preacher. He never forgot God in all that he was doing. And I'm just thankful to know him. And those of us who know him and know the truth know that the great Dr. King, his letter from the Birmingham jail would not have been mailed, not gotten the publicity that it did, had it not been for Fred Gray, the postmaster, getting King and all of the other marchers out of jail. I admire Fred. Fred's my friend. I'll do anything for Fred. He and his family has been a part of our family for all of these years. And I'm just glad to be a part of history today and say, happy birthday, Fred. Happy birthday. And you're going to catch up with me if you keep on making 90. You're getting close. God bless you and God keep you. And may you enjoy this day, you and Carol, for the rest of your life. Thank you so much for having me on and allowing me to be a part of this event.
It gives me great, good pleasure to send birthday greetings to Fred Gray, Attorney Fred Gray, and the institute named after him in Nashville. Fred is one of the early, very early pioneers of one of the greatest movements for cultural, social, religious, political, economic justice that the earth has ever seen. He was a young lawyer in Montgomery, Alabama, when the bus boycott of December the 1st, 1955 began. He became a lawyer for that campaign. That campaign became quickly a nonviolent campaign in the spirit of Jesus of Nazareth. In fact, on the very first night of the boycott, December 5th, Dr. King at the Holt Street Baptist Church gathering, massive gathering, said that we're going to do this in Christian love, indicating the religion of Jesus not as primarily a salvation religion, but as a religion helping us to be the kind of human beings that God wants us to be. Fred Gray represents one of the fine illustrations of what we ought to be as human beings, of how we ought to grow in our understanding of the religion of Jesus and in our own application of it. So I wish Brother Gray all blessings in this his birthday year. He has been a stalwart in what Congressman John Lewis called the nonviolent movement of America. He has used his gifts of law for undergirding that struggle, for undergirding people, for law. And the court represents a nonviolent way of getting work done for truth. And he has demonstrated a personal confidence and faith in Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth. We are fortunate that we can celebrate his birthday. So many people like Fred Gray,
who started off in Montgomery have not been as fortunate. Their names we do not know. So many folk in that great, wonderful movement will never get any kind of recognition. It is good that we can recognize Attorney Fred Gray on this occasion. May you be endowed with continued good health, and moreover, may you be continued endowed with the intellectual, the spiritual, the moral insights to guide many of us today and into the future.
Since no law school in Alabama would admit Mr. Gray, he enrolled in Case Western Reserve Law School in Cleveland, Ohio. Graduating in 1954, he returned to Montgomery, Alabama, where he began his law practice and his commitment to fight racial injustice.
Among those first cases in the early years were the defense of two women, 15-year-old Claudette Colvin and his good friend, local seamstress, and trained activist Rosa Parks.
Mrs. Parks' case led to his work in bus desegregation, and eventually that case led to a United States Supreme Court case that was led by Mr. Gray called Browder versus Gale. It also led him to the little-known preacher, Dr. Martin Luther King, who was new to the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, to lead and be the spokesperson for the bus boycott in Montgomery. In that handful of remarkable days, Gray's legal career in civil rights was launched.
Then when the district lines of the city of Tuskegee were rewritten so as to exclude African Americans from voting, Mr. Gray took the case Gamillion versus Lightfoot all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, where he won the first racial gerrymandering case before the U.S. High Court and laid the foundation for the principle, one person, one vote.
Mr. Gray represented Vivian Malone and James Hood in their efforts to desegregate the University of Alabama. He also led successful efforts to integrate Auburn University.
His work led directly to the desegregation of all Alabama public schools.
My name is Bernard Lafayette Jr., and I'm a native of Tampa, Florida. And I was a student at the American Baptist Theological Seminary, and I happened to have been the roommate for John Robert Lewis, Congressman Lewis. And I got involved in the movement because of him and the workshops with James Lawson Jr. So were very interested in the movement. And my being from Florida and John Lewis being from Alabama, we talked a lot about the Montgomery bus boycott and Martin Luther King. He was our hero, and we just admired so much what he did. So my knowledge of Attorney Fred Gray was actually from the Montgomery movement and what he did. And we just admired him and the courage he had and the tenacity and the continued support. He never gave up. And that was a key thing. He was a model for us, that he didn't just do one case, he did many cases, but he was very much involved. And it so happens that later on, much later, in my own career, I ended up marrying Kate Lafayette, who was from Tuskegee, Alabama. And her father owned a business, and he was Booker T. Washington's office boy. And he built the first African-American supermarket when they had Gamillion versus Lightfoot case where they tried to divide the city and didn't allow blacks to, eat downtown or didn't want them to participate in their voting, so they divided the city. And that's why we live in Tuskegee Institute. So there's a Tuskegee, Alabama, then there's a Tuskegee Institute, Alabama. And Attorney Fred Gray moved to Tuskegee, and Tuskegee University is here, and that sort of thing as well. And the city was Tuskegee Institute, which was Black City. And in fact, his first office when he moved to Tuskegee was in my father-in-law's building, office building. And so he was very close to our family and always very supportive and helpful as well. But we always admired him and the work that he did. But more than just simply doing legal work, he was a man of courage, a man of fortitude. He was an example and model for many of the lawyers. He was that kind of person. And he made a big difference in helping people decide which direction they were going. And we had many Black people who went into the legal profession because of him and the model that he set. And one of the things that I appreciate was the Fred Gray Museum here in Tuskegee. It's a real good example. It has a great display and documentation on the movement itself. So for your 90th birthday celebration, Attorney Fred Gray, I want to wish you the most. Kate Lafayette and I both want to wish you the best, and we're very proud of you, and continue to work, because more than ever, we need you now. Thank you.
This is Johnny Ford, former mayor of Tuskegee, Alabama, former Alabama state legislator, and now city council person here in Tuskegee, Alabama, the pride of the swift-growing South. Fred David Gray, how do I know him? First of all, what a man. What an outstanding person of service. A man who served as the attorney for Mrs. Rosa Parks, Dr. Martin Luther King, and of course, for those of us here in Tuskegee, Alabama. But I first met Mr. Gray back in 1969, when I served as Model Cities Director for the city of Tuskegee. And I am very proud that I had the opportunity to serve as his campaign manager when he ran for the Alabama legislature. But in 1970, Mr. Gray asked me to be his campaign manager, and we were successful in mobilizing the vote for him in Bullock, Barber, and Macon counties. He became the first Democratic nominee and was elected as the first Democrat elected to the Alabama legislature since Reconstruction. Fred Gray was a history maker. He had been a history maker because he was there during the Montgomery bus boycott. I knew of him then, for my family was involved in the civil rights struggle. And as a child, I grew up in the civil rights struggle here in Tuskegee. Mr. Gray, of course, was in Montgomery during those days. So he was a hero in so many, many ways. In Montgomery, Alabama, in going away to law school and coming back to Alabama, his theme was to destroy everything that was segregated in the state of Alabama. So I had the honor of serving as his campaign manager in 1970. He went on to serve with great distinction as a member of the Alabama legislature. He sponsored legislation that called for justice and equality in the state of Alabama at that time. He was an outstanding legislator. As a matter of fact, he was voted as the best orator in the Alabama legislature, So he served well there. And then, of course, when I ran for mayor in 1972, it was Fred Gray who used his legal knowledge to join with attorney J.L. Chestnut in Selma, Alabama, when I was denied the opportunity for people who wanted to register and vote for me, college students, they were denied the right to vote. In 1972, thanks to Mr. Gray, I was elected the first African-American mayor in the history of Tuskegee, Alabama. He continued to serve, and it was incidentally during that year in 1972, that was when the syphilis study broke. But it was Fred Gray who took the legal leadership, along with Charlie Pollard and others, to file that lawsuit on behalf of the men in the syphilis study. That was another great accomplishment of Fred Gray. I could go on and on talking about the many things that he has done as a lawyer, as an author, his book, Bus Ride to Justice, and as a religious leader, the work in his church, as a family man. He has a wonderful, wonderful family. And now his lovely wife, Carol, they are just an inspiration. Fred, David Gray, and his entire family. So let me conclude by saying, as he gets ready to celebrate 90 years of life, it has been a tremendous life. And I do hope and pray that the Lord will bless him to live many, many more years, because he is still active. He is still on the firing line. He is still serving and reaching out and touching people every day, practicing lawyer still. He has been an inspiration to many young lawyers. His two sons are lawyers. My son is a lawyer. All of them have been inspired by the legal accomplishment of attorney Fred David Gray. He is my David because he was able to slay the Goliaths of segregation and prejudice in Alabama. Long live Fred Gray. Thank you for your years of service. And I want to take this opportunity to wish you a happy birthday on behalf of my colleagues who make up the World Conference of Mayors, Conférence Mondiale des Maires, an organization that he serves today as our general counsel, representing mayors in this country and from around the globe. So on behalf of all of us in the World Conference of Mayors, on behalf of the Historic Black Towns and Settlements Alliance, another organization that I chair, he also incorporated that organization. And I'm also honored to be a member of his board of the Tuskegee History Center here in Tuskegee, Alabama. So yes, I could go on and on talking about my dear friend, my mentor, my leader, my neighbor, and my dear brother, the Honorable Fred David Gray. Long live Fred Gray.
Had the privilege 28 years ago to meet Fred Gray. At the time, my family and I was attending service at the Central Street Church there in Atlanta. And Fred's older daughter, Deborah, came to me one Sunday afternoon, and informed me that her father's preacher was leaving and wanted to know would I be interested in doing some part-time preaching there in Tuskegee. So I told her I'd be interested in talking. Now, at that time, the only thing that I knew about Fred Gray was that he was Deborah Gray's father and that he was an attorney. That's all I knew about him. So that night when I got home, I called him, told him who I was and how I got his number, and that I heard that they was interested in a part-time preacher. He said, well, no, we're interested in a preacher, but we're not looking for anybody part-time. And so we talked for a moment. He said, now, by the way, if you're interested, we'd like to talk with you, but here's what we can pay you, and it's non-negotiable. And so we set a time for me to come down and meet with him, which is about a week or so later. Well, my daughter was born Friday night. I met with them for the first time on Saturday morning. So my daughter would turn 28 in January, and I always remind him on that day of exactly how long I've been knowing him. So come January 21st, I would have known him for 28 years. And I'm here to tell you that it has been 28 very awesome years. I had the privilege coming to serve as their pulpit minister. Magnificent opportunity, really helped me in a lot of ways, but he and I became close friends from the beginning. Now, I'm going to share this with you, and I don't really know how to explain this. I have a very unique relationship with Fred Gray, but the relationship that I had with him 28 years later is not much different than it was the day that I met him. And I know that over the years, our relationship has developed, but he has treated me the first time that I met him, the way that he treats me now. We have a very unique relationship, but we've had a magnificent relationship over these many years. I had the privilege of bearing his first wife, Sister Gray, had the unique privilege of attending the wedding up in Cleveland of his second wife, Sister Carol, and we are just very good friends to this day. And over the years, again, our relationship has grown. But Fred Gray is a unique man. Let me share this before my time run out. Fred Gray is the most unrecognized civil rights giant that's alive today. And unless you read his book, Bus Ride to Justice, a lot of this stuff that you will not know, how because of him and a couple other people are responsible for Martin Luther King becoming the head of the movement. Magnificent story. I had the opportunity to meet those people prior to them passing. The Tuskegee Sympathy Study, he wrote a book on that. I had the privilege to be there when President Clinton made the announcement, but he is the most unrecognized living legend of our time, and I'm proud and honored to be called his friend. I don't take it lightly. His wife is a jewel. He has said it more than one time. He's had the privilege of having two good women for his wife, and he's told the truth, and I've had the privilege of knowing both of them. But Brother Gray, I want to wish you a happy 90th birthday. I've known you 28 years, and it's been 28 wonderful, wonderful years. And I pray that the Lord continue to keep you in health and keep you around for another long, long time. Know that you're my friend. I don't take our friendship lightly. And know that I'm always praying for you and your wife. God bless you. Have a wonderful, wonderful birthday and be blessed.
Brother Gray, this is Brother Jack. I just want to take this opportunity to say happy birthday to you. Happy 90th birthday, that is. And I want you to know, Brother Gray, that you mean so much to me. Words cannot express how much you have meant to my ministry and mean to my ministry, how much you mean to my family, how much you mean to the development of my spirituality. I am so thankful to be able to follow your guidance as a shepherd and your leadership in the Lord's church. And I'm happy to have the opportunity to get to know you as a person. You are so kind, so generous. You have been so generous to my family these 6.5 years. We thank you so much. And may God bless you on this day. Before I go, I'm reminded of a scripture In Psalms 37 and verse 23, it says that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. I know that God has been ordering your steps and he's not done yet. So, Brother Gray, here's to 90 years of being here, serving your community, your nation, and the world, making an indelible mark with all that you have done and continuing to bless the Lord's church as you continue to do. May God bless you, and may you enjoy many, many more.
That legacy in and of itself would have been remarkable, but it led to other cases, particularly the landmark case involving the Tuskegee syphilis study.
The Tuskegee syphilis study was a study in which African American men who thought they were receiving free health care to treat their disease were actually being enrolled as a control group to study the progression of the disease untreated. The study, funded, staffed, and supported by the federal government, began in 1932 and continued for another 40 years afterward. When the study was finally made public, Mr. Gray represented the victims of the study in their lawsuit against the federal government. That case led to the first federal legislation around informed consent for patients. Further, it led to the protection of human subjects in biomedical and behavioral research in the United States and internationally. It also resulted in the first apology from a sitting U.S. president for the actions of the U.S. government.
Gray's work in justice and reconciliation continues today in his History Center at Tuskegee. A nonprofit organization, the History Center focuses on the syphilis study and other civil rights issues in and around Tuskegee.
Well, Fred, it's an honor to be invited to participate in this birthday celebration. Eleanor and I wish you a very happy birthday. Few men, even for those who live long, have matched your vigor and record improving the lives of others. It seems that these 90 years you have lived selflessly and sacrificially with your granite-like commitment to justice and the equality and dignity of all mankind. Among lawyers, no one has plowed a wider path, changing human events and national institutions and accomplishing more with the tools of the legal profession than you have. In recounting your contributions, the prestigious National Law Journal recently described you as, and I quote, as one of the most consequential lawyers in the history of jurisprudence. Yes, one of the most consequential lawyers in the history of jurisprudence. Well deserved, Mr. Gray. You've received every imaginable award and commendation for your heroic work as America's civil rights attorney and as a constant advocate for the oppressed and for others with righteous causes. But there's more than just the incomparable legal victories and your precedent-setting cases, which will long be studied by law students and judges and others. There's the true measure of a man, the depth of your character, the firmness of your convictions, the fruits of your labors, the strength of your family, your devotion to your faith, your love for others. When measured by these traits, we realize that you have reached heights of accomplishments which few men ever attain. As much as any man I have ever known, you have answered the challenge of Micah 6:8. He has told you, O man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Fred, you did justice. You fought for and brought justice to the oppressed. And you did it with Christian grace, kindness, dignity, humility, and respect, even to those who bitterly oppose you. In the closing reflections of your book, Bus Ride to Justice, you sum up beautifully your life. And may I read just a small portion, the final words. Above all, I pledge to do my best to live a Christian life as a benediction to those I have loved and who have loved me, and to those who have inspired me, and in some cases given their very lives so that I could do my part in destroying everything segregated I could find. May God bless America, my home sweet home, and may God bless you. And to that, may I add, Mr. Gray, God bless you. Happy birthday. And God bless you, Carol, and your wonderful family. And thank you, Fred, for raising up some very fine lawyers to follow in your footsteps. Happy birthday. God bless you.
It is such a privilege for me to be part of celebrating the life of a great American hero, Mr. Fred Gray. Mr. Gray, happy birthday. There are so many of us who are so grateful and so appreciative for everything you've done. I am among many generations of lawyers that have stood on your shoulders. You've done extraordinary things to make it possible for the rest of us to have opportunities that were denied so many who came before us. I know you were among the community of Black people in this state who would put on their Sunday best to go places, to push, to demand, to challenge inequality and injustice. And for that activism, you and others were beaten and battered and bruised, and yet you continued to say the things that need to be said. You continued to do the things you needed to do. Mr. Gray, I am honored to know you, to think of you as a friend and a mentor, because you have taught me that sometimes we have to stand even when people say sit down. Sometimes we have to speak even when people say be quiet. America owes a great debt to you. You were the conductor of that bus ride to freedom that many of us have taken and been able to use to create opportunities and jobs and efforts that have been critical to the health and well-being of this nation.
Happy 90th birthday, Attorney Fred Gray, a faithful warrior against injustice. As we salute you, I am reminded of what the Bible says in Micah 6 and 8. He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what doth the Lord require of you? But to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. The first portion of this scriptural requirement deals with justice, or in other words, doing what is right. Justice was important to my parents, and as a carrier of their legacy, it is also very important to me. As such, I am honored to join with so many others across the nation in celebrating and paying tribute to you for your exemplary leadership as a defender of what is right and what is just. You, Attorney Gray, are a living legend, and history already reflects your significant contributions in tearing down those walls of segregation and injustice. I want to personally express my profound gratitude for all that you did on behalf of my father and the movement. In his book, Stride Toward Freedom, he commended you as a brilliant legal strategist. Additionally, he described the strong leadership that you and others provided from the early days of the Montgomery bus protest and how you became the Montgomery Improvement Association's, the MIA's full-time legal counsel to handle civil rights cases. I thank God for the remarkable gifts he gave you and the way you have consistently used those gifts as a defender of what is right and just for more than 6 decades. To God be the glory for your extraordinary legacy leadership. Happy 90th birthday.
First, I'd like to give thanks to God for granting me 90 years of rewarding and successful life. Secondly, I would like to thank my wife, Carol, for 20 years of marital bliss as of December 17th. After we both had lost our spouses and we met at a church event in Cleveland, and we thought we established a relationship, I told her I needed somebody to take care of me. She said she'd do it, and she's done a good job. Thank you very much. And she even was responsible for the 80th celebration some 10 years ago. I want to thank also my 4 children, Deborah, Vanessa, Fred Jr., Stanley, their spouses, my grandchildren, and great-grandchild. I also want to thank my stepchildren, Errol and June and Corey. I want to thank all of my relatives. All have helped to make this possible. Thanks to my law partners, Walter McGowan, Alan Nathanson, Fred Gray Jr., Stanley Gray, Bridget Gray, now retired Ernestine Saps, otherwise over the years. And I want to thank our staff, those still with us, Annie Bailey, who's been with me for over 50 years, and Trudy Powell, Vanessa Taylor, Celia Hatnock, and Jeanette Whitfield. Without them, we could not have made it. Thanks to my hundreds of clients, and without those clients, we would not have been able to do anything. Thanks also Alabama State University, where I received my undergraduate degree, and it's there that I decided I would become a lawyer in Alabama and destroy everything segregated I could find. Thanks also to Case Western Reserve University, where I attended law school, and for giving me a good legal education to enable me to do anything I've been able to do. I particularly want to extend a great thanks also to Lipscomb University, its president, Dr. L. Randolph Flowery, Dr. Randy Spivey, academic director of the Fred D. Gray Institute of Law, Justice, and Society, who in recent years has assisted me greatly and who have been of tremendous assistance in connection with this 90th birthday celebration. And finally, I thank all of you, wherever you are and whoever you are, for everything that you have done to help to make this celebration possible. Now, I realize there's been a lot of things, but I am very, very thankful. There's another group of people, however, who are now deceased, who helped to make this event possible. And while they're not participating in person, they're here in spirit. They are, first, my mother, Nancy Gray Arms, who, had she had lived, she would be 126 years old. I am the remaining survivor of her 5 children. She taught all of us that we could be anything we wanted to be if we did 3 things. 1, keep Christ first in our lives. 2, stay in school and get a good education. And 3, stay out of trouble. I've tried to do that, and I've tried to teach it to my children and grandchildren, and I recommend it to you. It worked for me well. There's another person, my first wife, Bernice Hill Gray, the mother of our 4 children. Her brother, Elbert Hill, and his wife, Pauline, are participating in this celebration. We married during the middle of the Montgomery bus boycott. It was called a bus boycott wedding. She worked by my side until her death. Whatever I've been able to do, and whatever things we have been able to do, she was responsible. So she still lives and still lives through me and through her children and grandchildren. There's another group of persons whose spirits are here. Those are the lawyers who worked with me and who passed on, particularly Attorney Solomon Say and Edwin Davis. If you will, for me, please, let's just take a moment of silence in memory of all those persons who also made it possible for this event and this celebration. Thank you. Having said that, I am honored, appreciative, and humbled to each of you for participating in this celebration today. This celebration is not so much about me, but it is also about you. Many of you have allowed me to represent you over the years. I hope you will allow me and our law firm to continue to represent you in years to come. It is because of your permitting us or me to represent you that we are here. So when you need the best legal services in Alabama, contact us at our law firm. We will certainly answer. 90 years is a long time. On the other hand, in the sight of the Lord, it is nothing. For 1,000 years is as 1 year when it is past. If there are others participating today who are in the 90+ club, you can understand how honored I feel to be as young as you are as I join 90th Club. Thank you for permitting me to join your club. I then humbly accept the accolades and all the good things you have said about me on behalf of all those clients and their descendants who, during the last 65 years, trusted me to handle their legal cases. I was not only able to handle your civil rights cases, but your personal injury cases, adoption, real estate transactions, probate work, and just plain everyday legal work that a small town lawyer must do in order to render service. Most of these cases were never appealed. You gave me, a young lawyer, an opportunity to represent you, and I am forever grateful. On the other hand, many cases in which some of you were plaintiffs and some of your parents were plaintiffs resulted in breaking down the walls of segregation and changing the landscape in America. America is grateful for your contribution. I particularly express my appreciation for your warm honors on behalf of those clients who were unknown to the public, but known to you. You know about Mrs. Parks and Dr. King and Congressman John Lewis and other cases we have talked about and you've heard about during this celebration. Some of you do not know, but some of you do. I accept your accolades on behalf of the 623 men in the infamous Tuskegee syphilis study. These men from Macon County who were involved in the infamous Tuskegee syphilis study. The federal government took advantage of those men. They were rural, basically farmers in Macon County, and engaged them in a 40-year study without their consent, placing their lives and families in jeopardy. I not only accept your accolades on their behalf, but I pledge to you, as I did to those men when President Clinton made an apology to them on May 15th, 1997 in the East Room of the White House. And when Mr. Shaw, a participant who introduced the president, announced the formation of the Tuskegee Human and Civil Rights Multicultural Center, also known as the Tuskegee History Center. Those men told the president at the White House at that apology that he thanked them for all he was doing, but what they wanted was a permanent memorial in Tuskegee, Alabama, so people will know that they made a contribution to this country. I promised them that we would, with the Lord's help and your help, we would have that memorial. We have that memorial for them. I have dedicated the last 23 years of my life toward raising funds to assist in making a permanent memorial in Tuskegee for these men. I shall continue to do that. The Tuskegee History Center preserves the rich history of this nation. And that's the first mission of the center, and that was to have a memorial for these men. The second mission is even broader than that, because it educates the nation on the three ethnic groups that have helped to develop this country. They are Native Americans, we used to call them Indians, Americans of European descent, and Americans of African descent. These ethnic groups have made substantial contribution to this country. Under one roof at the center, you are able to see the contributions they've made and realize the great problems they had then. So whatever problems we still have in this country working together, we ought to be able to solve those problems. And the final mission of the center is to educate the public on the struggle that African Americans have endured from slavery to the present, emphasizing precedent-setting lawsuits that residents of Macon County, Alabama filed and won. The favorable decisions from those cases not only helped residents of Macon County, but residents across the nation. I invite you to Tuskegee to visit and to support the center. There are now at least 2 generations of persons in this country who knew nothing at all about hardcore segregation. The hardcore segregation that existed at the time when I started practicing law. And it educates the public from slavery until now. It is important that we have museums in this country teaching the younger generation about the struggle of African Americans from slavery to the present. And there are many such museums across the nation who need your help. And of course, the Tuskegee History Center is one of them. because the struggle that African American has encountered since slavery needs to be known, preserved, and to be sure that we finish the job. The Lord has truly blessed me during my 90 years. He has blessed me with good health, great family, and great friends like you. He has blessed me with the opportunity to serve. Many of my old close schoolmates from the Nashville Christian Institute may be participating here today, and I thank them also. But in addition to those old friends, one of the greatest influences upon my life has been my church family. I am delighted to have and particularly those associated with the Tuskegee Church of Christ, where I am privileged to serve as one of its elders. Thanks to Brother Jack, our minister, and members who are participating in this celebration. Without the church and without the instructions that I received at the Holt Street Church of Christ in Montgomery as a child, and the instructions I received at the Nashville Christian Institute, none of this would be possible. Thank you. I say today to all of you, particularly to those who have known me for a long time at NCI and elsewhere, I said to those of you who I have recently met who are participating, I sincerely appreciate your participation. I sincerely appreciate the participation of each one of you in sharing with me and my family my 90th birthday. So it is with deep humility that I accept all that you have said and the honors you have given me. I accept it, as I have said, on behalf of my clients whose names never appear in print media and whose faces never appear on television. They are the persons that laid the foundation, who made it possible so that you could honor me here today. Proudly, as I look back over 65 years of civil rights practice, we have made tremendous progress in this country. However, the struggle for equal justice continues. If what I have tried to do and others means anything, it means, unfortunately, that racism and inequality still exist in this country, and it's wrong. It is because of racial inequality and racism that I became a lawyer. We then must complete the struggle for equal justice under the law. My challenge to you is to do everything you can to eliminate racism and inequality, and we need to work on it as hard as we can, as long as we can. That is my challenge to you. Thanks for your participation. Thanks for beginning the holiday season with us. Merry Christmas, best wishes for our new year. Thank you very much.